And good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Tim?
Doing great. And normally we have Sheriff Palmer with us on Mondays, but today we have a special treat. Chief Deputy Mark Thigpen. Now, this is like your third or fourth time on the show, I think. So you're kind of getting a lot of practice at this.
A little bit.
Yeah, the sheriff's going to have you coming over every week from now, and I that's what I heard anyway.
We'll have to talk to him about that. I'm not sure that's in the forecast.
You always do a fantastic job, very informative, and a great service to the community, and we appreciate all the hard work that you and the whole office does over at the sheriff's office. Well, we do have a holiday weekend coming up. This a lot of people have 3-day weekends, and the 4th of July is just a week from today. It's hard to believe that we're already this far into the year.
It is moving along, isn't it?
And we've seen a lot of heat in the last. It's going to be a little cooler this week than last week. We've seen quite a few 90s over the weekend, and we've been trying to encourage people to drink plenty of water and stay healthy and not be out in the sun too long, and all those things that happen this time of year. And of course, not leaving animals inside cars if you go shopping, and animals. And sadly, we have to remind people not to leave their children in heated cars, because there's been a lot of babies that have died. I've seen a lot of news stories on that.
I was doing some shopping this weekend, and it struck me as I walked into Walmart that they have a sticker on their door that reminds people to make sure you didn't leave anyone unattended in your car. And it's I don't know, sometimes that's hard for me to fathom that when my kids were younger, or now my grandkids, that I would be in a frame of mind to jump out of the car and forget them. I have problems with that, because I'm used to them, whether it was when the kids were little or the grandkids now, holding my hand, tugging my leg. I can't imagine being at that state to leave one of my children or grandchildren in the car.
Especially alone at that age, too. I mean, there's safety not only about the heat exhaustion, but the fact that someone could just easily break a window and kidnap. We see too many child abductions nowadays.
And unfortunately, I had this discussion not too long ago. Much as when you grew up, we left out of the house during the summertime, and you took off on foot or bicycle, and as long as you were home for supper, it didn't matter if you were gone fishing or just out just goofing off. The concerns were not the same years ago as they are now. And we live in different times in a different world.
Back then, we could pretty much be Opie from Mayberry and just go out fishing and walking up and down the creeks, and we might, stumble across a snake and things like that, but we didn't have to worry.
That's exactly right.
What has happened over the years that has created that sense of, I hate to say fear, but we seem to have a lot more problems with drugs, alcohol, and just a lot of people making some very bad decisions.
I think, Tim, if you or I could come up with that answer, we probably could be very rich and very famous. I don't know that there is an answer to that, but you're right. I come out quite often and work with our narcotics unit, and it just appalls me and amazes me at the commonality of possession of drugs, the commonality of the finding a hypodermic syringe in someone's pocket or their waistband or their pants. Tell my age, but I've been doing this for over 30 years, and finding a syringe on someone in relation to drug use 30 years ago was virtually non-existent.
Right.
And now we're having to totally change the way our guys look at searching things, because it's constant that they're finding uncapped syringes, uncapped needles. And of course, the danger and the health risk to them is just phenomenal. In fact, as soon as the new budget year rolls in, one of the first things that's on my list to be ordered for all of our personnel is what we call frisk gloves or search gloves. And they are gloves that are not completely
impenetrable.
There you go.
That is a hard word to say.
But they do minimize the risk of being stuck by a needle.
Right.
And you know, that's something that we're having to shift our thought process and our procedures to protect our people from that everyday risk. As a matter of fact, we had one of our courthouse security personnel that was stuck recently while searching a pocketbook of someone coming into the courthouse. And, you know, it is such a common place. And as we go around and we talk to the different drugstores, you know, they're having to change their processes where people come in and if you don't have a prescription for something such as insulin, then they're not going to sell you syringes.
Right.
So, but then that in turn creates another need or desire for these people that are illegally using these drugs to start stealing them, or you know, trying to get them from family members or someone else that they know that does have a need, a legitimate medical need. But our society has just changed dramatically. In that regard.
It also creates a problem of them reusing or sharing needles too, and that creates another series of medical issues that diseases are spread that way. It's hard to win.
It's kind of a never-ending cycle, and you're so right. I mean, we see. Went out with the drug guys on Saturday night. We conducted a search warrant on a house, and this particular person had no medical need for anything with syringes, but she had a bucket with probably, or a container that probably had easily 50 or 75 used syringes in it. As we were conducting the search, I was there assisting the other officers. On the bed, laying just on the bed, was 3 hypodermic needles. 2 of them empty, 1 of them loaded with morphine. And you know, you complicate that even more when you see the number of these people that have small children in their homes, and how easily accessible these drugs are just laying around to these children in this same home. It's almost unbelievable to describe, but almost every room we went in, there were just a variety of pills, from narcotics to antibiotics, just laying openly on the tables, on the bed, on the couch. You know, and these folks have at least one small child that is in and out of the home on occasion.
Right.
You know, so the danger is just compounded by the lackadaisicalness of these people as to where they put their stuff, and the accessibility to anyone and everyone.
And what I have noticed too is that the children, they have pretty much lost their innocence in growing up. They're exposed to so many things, not only the drugs, or seeing the choices their parents make, violence on TV. I mean, when we were growing up, we watched Little House on the Prairie, and that's about as violent as it got. But now there's so many things that are going into the kid's mind. Kids know a lot more at 11 years old than I probably knew at 19 because of so...
It is so true, and it's very saddening at the number of children that we encounter when we're out conducting our various operations. And for some of these kids, it's an every week occurrence for them to interact with law enforcement, DSS. You know, the number of DSS referrals has just skyrocketed. The number of children that we have in this county that are in foster care because their parents are not in a frame of mind to take care of them. The number of children that are being raised by grandparents versus their parents is just astounding.
And we shared a press release from the FBI, I think it was the Charlotte office, last week, about just to let people know about the dangers of child exploitation, and some parents even sell their kids into a slavery type. And how bad of a problem has human trafficking become? We see more and more news stories about that now when we didn't see that before.
It is really on the rise, on the increase, and it's hard to tell what impact our area is going to receive. But when we conduct intelligence briefings from the FBI, from immigrations, from some of those other agencies, we talk about being 2 hours from anywhere.
Right.
Well, all of those anywheres that we're 2 hours from are hubs for human trafficking. Atlanta has a huge market for human trafficking. You have a lot of drop-offs and pickups, if you will, in that area. When you look at Dalton, Georgia, Chattanooga area, that they have such an influx of immigrants that they have their own immigration office there. And unfortunately, where you have those immigration issues, you have human trafficking issues. Mm-hmm. So we are surrounded by the areas that have a major issue, and it's hard to tell what impact over time that's going to have on our area. It's something that we are conducting trainings on. The state actually included that as an in-service, a mandated in-service last year. So it's something that the officials all the way to Raleigh for North Carolina are looking at and saying, we've got to at least be aware of this and understand what's going on. So we've not had a tremendous problem with it here, but it's because of our locale, it's something we've got to be aware of.
Right. If it's even on the border of us, we've got to be vigilant and keeping an eye on that. And there's so many really hard drugs that get into our area now. What seems to be the worst illegal drug that you're seeing?
Our predominant drug is methamphetamine, followed closely or at times surpassed by the illegal use of prescription drugs. We have seen a resurge of heroin in the area recently. In fact, our narcotics guys did a interdiction a couple weeks ago and recovered some heroin out of a car. So it kind of cycles, and what we see as our guys are hammering away at, say, the methamphetamine trade, then we'll see a surge in the prescription pills. Likewise, when you see a lot of efforts on the prescription pill side of things, you'll see a surge in the methamphetamine or the heroines. So it kind of cycles around, but predominantly methamphetamine, and then the opiate-based painkillers are very neck and neck with the methamphetamine issue.
I understand that that's something that people can just make in their own homes. What about heroin? Is that something that's brought into here? Or?
Heroin is brought into here.
What exactly is heroin? Is it?
Heroin is an offshoot of opium of the poppy plant, and it's a excuse me, a chemical process that takes that opium and converts it into a usable drug, if you will. Now, our methamphetamine issues that we have here, though some of it is produced what a lot of people know as the shake and bake method, which is actually done in a couple of 2-liter Coke bottles or even in a 20-ounce bottle. We have a process now through the National Precursor Information Exchange Log where our narcotics unit plugs in people's names, and when you have to go in and sign for Sudafed, ephedrine-based drugs, they get an alert.
Right.
Not for everybody, but anybody who's on there, they create watch list. just a few months ago, they actually were able to intercept a young man who has a previous conviction for manufacturing methamphetamine, and he is banned from possessing any of the precursor chemicals for manufacturing meth. They actually were able to stop him. He was from another county, but he came here to purchase his needed items. They were able to stop him before he exited the county and charge him with possession of precursors, all based on getting those alerts from this national database.
And being national is important. I know back in not too long ago, someone would go to Murphy and then drive over to Georgia, Blairsville, and then go to Ducktown, and
Correct.
each was state by state. But now it's all tied together.
Correct, and it has really revolutionized that capability for them to track who and how much of these materials that they're purchasing. But we do have a large amount, and probably the predominant amount of our methamphetamine is actually what is considered Mexican meth, that has actually been produced in Mexico, smuggled across the border, and then comes to a distribution area. For us, that typically our intelligence is that it's coming from either the Metro Atlanta area or the Gainesville area, which is now becoming Metro Atlanta. So that's where our suppliers go and pick it up and then bring it back to our area. But most of that has actually been produced in Mexico and smuggled into the country.
All right. One question I do have about the Sudafed. Is there a concern, like if someone is actually sick and needs to go get Sudafed, are people? I know people are worried that they're going to end up on a list. Is there a certain amount that you can?
The law actually limits the amount that you can purchase, and you know as our folks look through these purchase logs, and they can actually go in and look at every store within Cherokee County that sells it, or within the tri-state area. And you can tell, say if it was myself and I have really bad allergies and I take a Sudafed or some form of Sudafed, you can kind of tell that it's a normal amount, and it's purchased, you know, on a regular basis at the same time frames. But then what we see with the illegal usage of it is someone will come in and purchase the maximum amount within a day or two time frame.
Right.
And then this system also has the capability for our officers to track associates. So if you and I were in the business, they put my name in, and then they can put you in as an associate. So then if I purchase the maximum amount and you purchase the maximum amount, all within a short time frame, then it continues to build that intelligence that probably you and I are fixing to get ready to go cook a round of meth. And that's something that we're seeing that happens routinely. I've been caught, so I want to lay low. So I pay you, I pay little John down the street $5, $10 to go in and purchase this for me. And you can purchase up to a certain number of dosages. He can purchase up to a certain number. And so what we see is these groups joining forces to purchase it, so that it doesn't come from just one person or from the person that is typically the cook. They will have, a lot of times, have these other people go out and buy it for them.
I still haven't been able to figure out the glamorous part of using meth. I don't understand that. What is there that makes someone want to try that even for the first time? If they've seen the before and after pictures of what it does to their body, what creates that desire?
You know, I don't know, and I guess I'm very blessed from the fact that I don't have an addictive nature about me, whether it's cigarettes or tobacco or whatever. I can't answer that question. In talking to people, the first couple times they try it, they really describe having this just unreal euphoric high off of it. Unfortunately, what happens is once they reach that point, it becomes almost impossible to ever hit that again.
Right.
So they're using more and more and more and more to try to find that same euphoric high, but they have trouble reaching that point again.
I understand it's really, really hard to stop because people who have wanted to stop continue having that urge, that thirst for more. So
the data that has been collected from all of the medical research groups, say that between 94 and 96% of the people who try meth become addicted to it, and it is one of the hardest drugs to beat that addiction. I've had the opportunity to sit in on several classes and see some of these studies, and it gets very technical, but it actually alters some of the chemical balances and triggers in your brain that drives you to want it over and over and over again, and more and more and more of it.
And that's good information to have if someone out there's that just want to say, I want to try it one time to see what it's like. The chances of you getting one time are very slim. They're just going to create that craving.
That's correct. It is one of the most addictive drugs on the scene today. It's very, very sad when I look at people that I've dealt with over the years, and people who had successful jobs, who had successful families, and now they're homeless. They're surfing from couch to couch wherever they can find a place to lay. They don't own a thing to their name because this has consumed them, and they spend every waking moment looking for that fix, and every dime that they can get to purchase that fix.
Right, and I've always been of the mind it's okay to ruin your life if you want to, if that's your problem, when you start ruining other people's lives, your family, because it doesn't just affect you, it affects those close to you.
I had the opportunity to speak to a gentleman that I've known for years. Knew him when he was much, much younger. As I spoke to him, I had the opportunity to try to encourage him to find a better path.
Right.
And his almost exact words of what you just said to me were, "What does it matter? I'm not hurting anyone but myself." But the reality of that is so far from the truth, because he has a son who has seen where he went, and he's following in his footsteps. His family has spent thousands of dollars, countless untold dollars, trying to seek help and rehab for him. He has no job. He has a son who even though he's now old enough to be on his own, he has no support from his father. So it's, even if you think it's only affecting you, it's not. It ripples out to your family, your friends, and unfortunately, when you really reach some of these points that a lot of the people we're seeing, it drives you to a point to start stealing to support your habits.
There are people even steal from their family and their loved ones.
Yes, I mean we see it, we hear it all the time. May not be that they want to report it or that they want to have their loved one locked up for it, but we hear it all the time. There's no way that it just affects the person who's using it.
Right.
And not to leave out how it affects you and I as members of the community, because as these people have these problems and they don't have jobs, and they end up in the emergency room, or they end up in the mental health system for substance abuse, you and I as taxpayers are footing that bill for their health care and their mental health care.
And I'm sure we've seen that number skyrocket over the past decade.
I know the sheriff spoke about this in the past, but the number of involuntary commitments that we handle through our office for substance abuse, I would easily say has tripled in the last few years. So not only from the cost of actually the facilities, but also the cost for, like the sheriff's office, for going out and picking up these people, transporting them to the hospital. If they have to be set with at the hospital by one of our officers, then that cost, and some of these people we've had to sit with in the past for 2 weeks. And you're talking about 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Then there's transportation onto a longer term facility somewhere without in the state. And then a lot of times we're responsible for going back and picking them up and bringing them back to Cherokee County. So that effect is way more than just them.
Right. It does just scatter out to everyone around you. And wow, I see we're running a little short on time. We do want to talk about holiday safety coming up, the 4th of July weekend and fireworks.
Yes.
So go ahead and give us some pointers there.
Just a quick reminder: there are certain fireworks now that are legal in the state of North Carolina. Those can be purchased at Walmart, Ingalls, and those things. But a lot of the fireworks that people do go and purchase across the Tennessee line or South Carolina are illegal in North Carolina. So be cautious as to what you're purchasing. Try to be cognizant that you're buying legal fireworks, but then just the use of them. Using them in a safe area, as dry as things have been, very easy to set off a brush fire, or the carelessness of where you're pointing them at. We've been very fortunate in this area not to have a lot of fireworks injuries, but everywhere around us we've seen where someone has pointed a firework in a dangerous direction, and it's ended up causing injuries. We see examples of people thinking, well, I can hold it in my hand and let it go off, and that always ends bad. And then of course, along with the holidays often comes the use of alcohol. So we encourage everyone to, if you're on the lakes, if you're going to be out, don't be boating and while intoxicated or driving. Make sure you've got designated drivers. And then also, the use of fireworks and alcohol usually is a bad mix as well. Yeah. So we just want to caution everyone to be safe over this holiday weekend. All right.
You also have the tip line that people call in and report crime activity. And let me just do a sample call to that line to let listeners know what they're going to get when they call. The number is, let me go ahead and punch it on my phone here, 828-837-1344. And then I can hit this button here, and it should start ringing. This is what you hear when you call the tip line. So this will be a live demonstration. All right, so that's the recording on the tip line. How does that tip line work for our community?
It actually goes into our our automated phone system, and about 2-3 months ago, we actually got with our IT department because previously that actually came to a single phone, and someone physically had to go to that phone and retrieve those those messages. Our IT department was able to work with us, and we virtualized that. So now, when those calls come in, they are forwarded to all of our investigators, both the narcotics and the general criminal investigators, and as well as the sheriff and myself. So they'll receive an email that there's been a message that's come into the tip line, and they can go on from their smartphone, their computer, and listen to those. The downside to that is it doesn't ring anybody's phone immediately. Of course, previously it wasn't at any one person's desk. It was in a designated location for all the investigators to go and listen to. It has expanded the number of people that get it, not immediately, but within an hour or so time. All of the investigators will get that email that phone that they have received a message on that phone line.
So this should not be used to like report someone driving drunk on. This is not to be confused with 911. 911 is emergency, something needs to be done right now.
Correct.
And the tip line is for information that may help solve a crime.
We do get occasionally we'll get a message on there from someone who says, I'm following a drunk driver, or has some suspicious activity, and we'd like everyone to know that that's not going to be answered immediately. It's more of an investigative tool, and that you would need to either hang up and call 911 or non-emergency line into dispatch if you don't think it deserves a 911 call, which is 835-3144. But we also want people to know that we do answer those tip lines and listen to it. Most people leave anonymous tips on there. They don't want someone to call them back. So a lot of times they don't know what took place. But we are fortunate that we've been able to make several arrests and use the information to build towards search warrants and other things. So it's a very, very valuable tool. And we just want the citizens to know that it's there and we're using it.
All right. Let me give that number one more time. The tip line is 837-1344, 837-1344. And again, that will assist the sheriff's office if you have some crime tips. And we normally put that on the very bottom of every press release we put out from your sheriff's office. You can find that on our Facebook page, our website, and the Sheriff's Office Facebook page as well. And there's also an email address. It's kind of not a very pretty email address to read on the radio, but if you click on that link or copy and paste it from the press release, you should be able to get an email tip line. Does that also go to all the investigators as well?
It does as well.
All right. Well, very, very good. Thanks for all the information today. Anything that you wanted to cover that we didn't get to today?
I believe we're pretty good.
All right. Our time is 11:39. It's WKRK Radio in Murphy, North Carolina. Stay tuned. We have Pastor Odd Brown with the Little Brasstown Baptist Church coming up in just a moment here on WKRK.